Welcome to the 2024 Utah House of Representatives District 9 candidate debate, proudly hosted by the Weber Fraternal Order of Police. This event is being recorded, and technology permitting, it will be posted on social media to ensure that those who are unable to attend can still view the discussion. My name is Derek Fisher, and I have been the privilege of serving as president of the Weber Fraternal Order of Police. Our organization represents officers and deputies from agencies across Weber and Morton counties. Named after the Weber River that flows through both counties, our lodge is dedicated to serving our members by providing support, organizing events, and acting as a representative with local administrations and city leaders. We are also deeply committed to fostering strong relationships with the communities we serve, whether through service projects, community events, or outreach initiatives. State government representatives have the role of managing and creating policies that shape first responder resources and responses across the state. The Weber FOP invited all candidates for District 9 to participate in this debate. We were unable to attain a response from one of the three candidates. The focus of tonight's debate is public safety, a matter that affects us all. Members of the public, as well as our public safety professionals, including police, fire, and dispatch, were invited to attend and submit their questions. Important dates for the election. Election day will be on Tuesday, November 5th. Ballots will be mailed out approximately 2 weeks prior to the election. Questions were submitted via email prior to the debate, and those selected were chosen based on their relevance to the topic of the public safety and community interest. Given the time constraints, we may not be able to address all the questions during the debate. However, any questions that are not asked will be forwarded to the candidates for written responses, which will be posted on our social media page. If time allows, after the prepared questions have been addressed, members of the audience will have the opportunity to ask the candidates additional questions. This portion will be facilitated by our event moderators. Our candidates tonight are Jake Sawyer and Angela Choberka. An introduction to the topic. Law enforcement is becoming an increasingly less desirable career for a variety of reasons. Among them are the extension of retirement requirements to 25 years under a retirement plan that is not competitive with surrounding states. Additionally, there has been a shift toward greater leniency for offenders, coupled with stricter guidelines on enforcement and officers themselves. Furthermore, many agencies struggle with lack of recognition and value for the work officers perform. Law enforcement in our state faces significant challenges with officer retention and adequate compensation. Officers caught in between tiered systems do not receive the same retirement benefits as their peers. Unfortunately, state representatives have not addressed these issues they created. Moreover, first responders lack sufficient rights to appeal unfair and unethical disciplinary actions, particularly when faced with inadequate leadership that fails to ensure a just process. For too long, state representatives have neglected the importance of long-term planning for first responders, leaving them with a retirement system designed more to take money from first responders' retirement and put it in other projects across the state. This lack of foresight has led to significant understaffing, further diminishing the resources available to our first responders as they work to protect and serve our communities effectively. All right, do an introduction of the moderators. Kayla Griffin holds 3 master's degrees and is a national champion public speaker, and together with Mark has helped students become national champions in speech and debate. Kayla is a local artist and published poet, and has led multiple initiatives as a volunteer to advocate for people with gastrointestinal disabilities through the International Foundation of Gastrointestinal Disorders. Mark Galaviz is a coach of Weber State speech and debate team, winners of the national championship in 2022. Mark has also led the team to 4 consecutive conference titles. Additionally, Mark has helped with local high schools, Boy Scout troops, and other organizations in researching and developing their ideas as they move through educational pathway. Mark lives with his wife, Kayla, their dog Wash, and 2 rowdy snails. The rules for the debate. Each candidate will be allotted a 2-minute introduction and closing. When a question is asked, each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. If another candidate is addressed during the answer, that candidate has 1 minute to respond. At the moderator's discretion, additional follow-up questions may be asked. And with that, I'll turn the time over to the moderators.
All right, everybody, how we doing out there? Good. We got a pretty good crowd there. How you two doing, Jake, Angela? Doing all right? Okay. I am a stickler for time, so if you go over, I will jump in. I'll give you a couple seconds to finish a thought or something like that, but I do like to let people know. Of course, we're going to start off with the introduction, so that part's easy. So, Jake, if you'll lead us off, you have 2 minutes on the clock. Let us know who you are.
Sure. Well, first, thank you so much for having us here and facilitating this. Angela, thanks for being here. I know it's always good when all candidates can be here. My name's Jake Sawyer. I am the Republican candidate running for House District 9. My background is in mortgages and real estate. I bring different ideas when it comes to our housing affordability here in Utah because I've seen firsthand that this is affecting every single family, no matter your economic status. Rates are out of control, house prices are out of control, and we've got to figure out a Utah way to get our younger people to be able to afford homes so that they can have a future here. I bring common sense solutions to the table. I'm always willing to listen to people, and I'm ready to take on the fight at the Capitol. So that's who I am, and I'm excited to be here.
All right. Thank you very much. Angela, same question. 2 minutes
Well,
on the
thank
clock.
you. Thank you all so much for being here, and thank you, Jake, for being here as well. So I'm Angela Choberka, and I'm running for House District 9. Many of you may know me because I've served on the Ogden City Council for the past 6 years, almost 7 years now. I'm a public servant at heart. I love to connect with people and talk about their issues and ensure that I'm representing them in these spaces. One reason that I've decided to run for the state office is that I'm really impatient. I'm impatient because people feel that their public servants are not listening to them. They feel like things are happening that are kind of beyond their control. And so I definitely want to bring my experience from being in the city government to the House level as well. I also love to work beyond these divides that we have, right? We're kind of joking about that Jake and I it seems like we agree about a lot of stuff. We have a lot of things in common. So maybe the ways that we see getting there or getting to solutions might be a little bit different, but I definitely work across the aisle in many situations, and I'm used to having uncomfortable conversations with people that don't always agree with me, but in the end, we usually walk away respecting each other, and we come to great solutions together. So I'm excited to bring that perspective to the House and excited to represent House District 9.
All right. Thank you very much. First one, we'll just get into, we always hear about the 90-day plan, right? What are we going to do once we hit the office? How do we hit the ground running? What's going on that? So starting with you, Angela, what would you do in your first 90 days if you are elected?
You bet. Well, when I'm elected, I will be learning a lot. It'll be my first time in the legislature, right? So I'll have to learn the ropes and understand how that system works. But I also hope to get right down to work and bring some of the issues that I've learned out on the campaign trail to bear. I mean, definitely people are talking about housing, these kinds of issues that impact them every day. I think there's also some systemic issues that we need to look at and really look at the root causes of issues is something that I've done a lot through my career in my day job and from being a public school teacher. And we see families and students that don't always have the resources they need so that they can thrive. So I really love to look at those kind of upstream effects and think about what are the things that really will have the most impact in the long run. And we do have some easy wins too. There's certainly things that we can do that help support people with ideas about innovative housing solutions and other things like that, or getting a grocery store in West Haven, which we were just talking about. Things like that are definitely on the top of my list, those things that impact people directly in their daily lives. But then I also think there's some bigger things we can do too.
Okay, thank you very much. Jake, same question.
Yeah, so I think we all know first 90 days, the session's already done by then, right? And we're into the interim session at that point. As far as what I'd like to do, I would like to expand on SB 240, right? It's a housing bill that was passed last year. I think we can build on it. I think we can open it up to 203K mortgages, which are for renovation and rehabbing. That not only could bring price points down, people can buy, an old fixer-upper home, get a 203K mortgage, wrap in all of those fees and costs into a mortgage and be able to get into a home a heck of a lot cheaper than a brand new house. So I think if we can expand some of these grant programs and options to be able to help people, that's something I would absolutely love to focus in my first 90 days. The other thing is working with other stakeholders in the community, right? I don't have all the answers here. This is my first time running for an office. I haven't served on a city council or any elected position before, so I know it's vital that I've got to have community involvement, and I've got to have other people that know the answers to these questions better than I do at the table in order to come up with a solution. I feel like that's one of my best strong suits is being able to bring those people together and have those conversations. I think the worst thing that could happen is we have a disagreement and we stop talking, right? Angela and I can disagree on how we get somewhere, that's fine. But when that conversation stops, if we're wanting to be the representatives for a certain district, that just hurts those people.
Thank you very much. This one will just be a minute because it's that typical resume question, but I like to ask it anyway because see what you say. So that greatest strength, that greatest weakness question we always see on those resumes. So it's you, Jake, just 1 minute. Give us your greatest strength and greatest weakness and see how you can talk about that.
Well, my greatest weakness, I'm going to have to steal kind of what Angela said earlier, but I'm impatient, right? I'm the same way. I want things to move quicker than they do. I want things to get done faster, and I think that's with everybody. We all want things to get done quicker and faster than they do. The government runs very, very slowly. So I'm very impatient when it comes to things like that. As far as my biggest strength, I think I just kind of hit on it a little bit, but it's bringing people together to have these difficult discussions. We can facilitate discussions. We can bring the people in the room to have these topics discussed. Without leaving hurt feelings or offended or right, actually coming to a solution and leaving a meeting with an actual solution.
All right. Same question for you, Andrew.
Oh, geez, can I just steal his answers? I mean, yeah,
can.
we're kind of finding out that
Yeah, exactly.
we're after this, we're going to be best friends. But so I think one of my weaknesses, I have to admit, is I definitely am not a great filing person. You can ask anybody in my family. My desk is piled with papers and things, and I know exactly where everything is. But other people are like, "Can you just deal with this mess?" It doesn't mean that I'm not effective at doing all my jobs and everything. It just means that I don't like to file. So that's one of my biggest weaknesses. I think my strength, much like Jake is saying, is definitely connecting with people. I'm okay having conversations with people that have a different perspective than I do and seeing their humanity and kind of thinking the best, right? Always think the best of people when you come to the table and assume that a lot of times you actually do want you have the same values for the community, for everyone to thrive and to do good. But then you do sometimes have to stand up for what you believe in too. So there's kind of a balance there where you have to make sure that you're leaving a respectful conversation, but standing up for what you believe in.
Thank you very much. There's a phrase sometimes, and we've seen it here in Utah, sometimes the will of the people or what the people would like to see happening as far as districts, legislation sometimes clashes directly with the will of the legislator. So when you see that, so when in conflict, I think I have to give a little thing. When in conflict, you have the will of the people and what they're clamoring for and the will of what the legislators are clamoring for, how do you decide what is the best course of action and what kind of steers that direction? Angela, we'll start with you.
Well, I haven't been in the legislature before, but I deal with this kind of on a weekly basis in the council. Oftentimes, people come to us and they're concerned or worried about how something's impacting them. And then also, we as public servants, whether it's in the city council or the legislature, sometimes we do have knowledge that maybe they don't have because we've gone through several levels of work sessions and different discussions and done outreach in the community. So we might have a little bit of a broader perspective than those individuals. So I try to kind of bridge those divides that we might have and have those conversations with people directly. And try to be more proactive about it. That's definitely one of my approaches. Is sometimes we have people that come to us that have never heard about an issue before, but I always am advocating for and working toward getting those people involved in the conversation earlier in the process, so that then they understand a lot more of the nuances and realize, hey, we've been talking about this for 6 months. It didn't just happen last week, which is a lot of times how people feel when something lands on their doorstep. So that's one of my approaches, is to really connect with people early, make sure they have the right information. Sometimes there's a lot of misinformation that gets shared if it's through social media or other means. And honestly, people have my cell phone number, so they can reach out anytime and ask me questions and chat with me or reach out. And so I try to go to where the people are, talk to them proactively about what's happening, and make sure that it's connecting with whatever the legislative or the council body is doing too.
Okay. Thank you.
I think for me, I'm running to be a representative of the people. I agree. Everybody has their own perspective on a single issue, right? And that can vary widely. Knowledge is power, right? And I agree with Angela here that we have to be able to give over whatever knowledge we have, right, on a certain topic so that everybody can make an informed decision. But if I'm running to be representative of the people, to me, it doesn't matter if I'm in line with the legislature or not. I'm going to be in line with my district who voted me in to represent them.
Okay, very good. All right, you guys have gotten along really well. So I'm going to try to throw a curveball. We're going to try to not have that happen. No. Starting with you, Jake. What is more What is the most significant differences between the two of you up here today, as you see it? What is the biggest difference? If I'm
Yeah.
I'm in the booth, I'm trying to check the box. Why should I check your way instead of this way? What are the biggest differences between the two of you in your mind?
Well, I think we've kind of touched on it a little bit. I'm not from politics, right? I've served in a volunteer capacity as the Weber County Republican Party chair for 4 years. So I've had involvement in politics from more of an administrative side of things, right? Trying to help promote candidates, trying to help promote the values that we believe in as a Republican Party and as what I believe is Weber County. Those are the things that I've fought for, and those are the things that I've defended. I think people should vote for me because I have a plan around housing, right? I have a plan to help get people put back together when it comes to mental health issues, right? We had a bond that got dropped here in Weber County last year for the jail, and I understand the reason it got voted down. Doesn't mean the issues still aren't there, right? I believe people should vote for me because I come with common sense, conservative approach.
Okay. Same question, Aaron?
Yeah, well, I would agree that that's where we disagree or have differences, right? We're definitely have different parties. My values align with the Democratic Party, but also align with really getting out there to talk to people and their concerns. And I think that I'm definitely not a career politician, having served on the council for the past 7 years. I never saw myself in that role. The thing that kind of propelled me to do that is I felt like when I looked at that body, I didn't see myself represented there in the way that I would like. So then that's also kind of why I wanted to run for the legislature. As I said, I'm very impatient, and I feel like the supermajority, it makes it very challenging to have differences appear. I know that we were talking about there are nuances within the party, but that supermajority doesn't allow for all these other kinds of voices that maybe are in our community that don't feel that they're represented. So that's something that I want to point out. I think that there are differences in other ways that we think too. As I've said, I'm an advocate for reproductive rights. I'm an advocate for people having their voices heard at the legislative body that might be just a little bit different than my opponent.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to throw in a little curveball here because I think it's important to know both of you have talked, and I know there was one specific value, but for the most part, both of you have said several times this word values, right? And how we have differing values. But I think to drill down, if you were to give me what those values are, so give me your top 3 values when you look, something tangible that we as voters can sink our teeth into. What are we talking about when you say we represent these values? So we'll start with you, Angela. Give me, what values are we talking about?
Well, it's challenging for me to think about values without thinking about love.
Okay.
I like to lead with love. That's definitely one of my perspectives, and I'm sure that you also are a person that loves people. So I don't know if that's any different. But like I said, I think that being an advocate and standing up for what's right is really important to me, although people often think I'm really nice and don't understand that sometimes I will disagree with them when I believe it's right. So standing up for what's right. And then another value would be people, putting people at the center of everything.
Okay. Jake, same question?
Yeah, thanks. First, I would have to say compassion, right? Going along the same lines. I think every issue, no matter what we're talking about, if we can start with compassion, I think we're always off on a good foot. I think another one that's uniquely Utah is self-reliance, right? I think Utahns are known to be very self-reliant and helping themselves and getting themselves on a good foot. I know that there are many times and many instances when people need help, and if we are self-reliant, then we can be there to help those people and we can be there to support. And I think finally, just neighborly kindness, right? Just being that good Utah neighbor. We wave when you drive down the street, we shake your hand, we say hi. I think just being that good Utah neighbor is what we're talking about.
Okay. Both of you spoke about this, so this is an easier one to kind of move into. Homelessness, we've talked about some of the home prices and things like that, but now we're going to talk about, dig a little deeper on the homelessness, not only on the rise nationally, but on the rise here locally. First of all, it's kind of a two-part. What is your understanding what homelessness looks like in your district? And how do you plan on ensuring that the unsheltered are treated with respect and dignity while maintaining accountability to your communities, keeping them also safe and secure? Because sometimes there's the perception that those clash. I don't always agree, but that's the perception. So how do you talk about that? So, Jake, we'll start with you on that.
Yeah, again, starting with compassion, right? We can't just say grab them all, throw them all in jail, right? That just isn't going to work. I know, so I live out in West Haven in the district, and frankly, we don't see a lot of homelessness there. But I know in downtown Ogden, you may see homelessness there. I do think there are a lot of ways that we can try and help curb this situation. I know, like I've said, we want to build on SB 240 and expand on that and try and get more resources to help bring price points down. I've heard just last week in Kaysville, they've started a program where you can sell off a portion of your lot. I believe it has to be over a third of an acre, and then you can put an accessory dwelling unit on there. It can't be more than 900 square feet, and you could sell that off to somebody else. Now that brings price points way, way down, right? So instead of talking $300,000-$400,000, you may be talking less than $100,000, right? I think there's a lot of ways that we can move to make this happen for people, but I think what gets caught up is the red tape, right? The government gets in the way of trying to make some of these ideas happen. So I think we need to talk to people that actually are on the front lines, people that are working with the homeless that can help us come up with some solutions. On the other side of that, we've tagged, our police officers and our police department, first responders with, being that front line of defense. And I think we need to give whatever resources we can and allocate whatever resources we can to help them fight this battle that's going on.
Okay.
Well, again, I agree with everything you just said, but I do have a lot of experience in this area. Unfortunately, it is a problem that we haven't done away with yet. So over the past 10 years, I've not only worked with the not-for-profit organizations and the service providers in our community. I'm on the Lantern House board, for example, the YCC board, working really closely with people to really figure out what those key pieces are that we can do to help address the immediate needs of people right when they're unhoused and they're living there, and how we connect them with resources. I was an advocate for building the Homeless Advocate Program in the Ogden Police Department, which is a really wonderful program that was a partnership between a community member that was really passionate about helping to see people in that situation in a humane way, and a former police chief, Chief Watt. They came to me with this idea, and I helped to advocate for that, and it's been very successful. It takes a long time to help people that have been really alienated or underserved in certain ways in our systems that end up living in our parks, for many years. So one woman, for example, she lived in Lester Park right by my house for about 25 years. And they were able to actually mitigate that and connect her with resources from not only changing sort of the perspective that the public safety officers had of folks living in that situation, but also building a trusting relationship with her to say, this is what we'll do to try to help connect you with resources. And then also, I think you're right, dealing with the mental health crisis that we have in our community is really, one of those root causes of some of those issues and other things like that. So yeah, definitely working with those service providers and making sure they have the resources they need. That is a constant battle for all those service providers to always be looking for grant funding or other ways that they can sustain the vital work that they do in our communities.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to drill down for a minute on that because there's part of it I think both of us missed. So there was a big part is ensuring that the unsheltered are treated with dignity and respect, because I think there's that whole mentality of how we treat our homelessness and how we treat indigenous and other societies and other members of our community. So how do you ensure, because that was a big question that was pushed, how do we ensure that the unsheltered are treated with dignity and respect? How would you like to, so 1 minute on there, we'll start with you, Angela. How would you do that?
Well, I think that advocate program is a perfect example where you actually get out to know people and know their names and understand what the barriers are. Sometimes barriers are as small as they don't have their driver's license or social security card anymore. And in order to go into the federal building where you have to access getting those documents, you have to have an ID. So there's these certain barriers in our community that have not been set up to cause these challenges, but you have to be able to identify them in order to be able to address them. So I think that that's really important to realize that those things exist. And then also, like I said, to really have more of an approach where you see them as they could be someone that's related to you. This could happen to anyone at any time for various reasons, and how do we help to support them so that they don't have to be in that situation?
Okay. Take the same question?
Yeah, I'd have to completely agree, right? It's talking to them. They aren't just statistics. They aren't just numbers. They're human beings that have had some really bad luck and some really bad things happen in their lives. the least we could do is be there to support them and help give them the tools that they need, right? Like that example about going into the federal building is a perfect example, right? That would stop anybody that didn't know how to get a driver's license, and the littlest thing is just going and talking to them could solve that for them. So, yeah, I think if we need more training, if we need more resources, whatever that looks like for those frontline people that are having to deal with these issues, whatever they need, I think we need to make that a priority to help.
Okay, thank you very much. Zigging a little bit here in this age of technology, social media, we're in front of some cameras here. We know that, but it's hard to engage, especially some of our young people, with topics until it really hits them, right? Until it negatively impacts them. A lot of people are kind of oblivious to what's going on. So if you're elected, how would you change how we're approaching our communities, but on a technological angle? Because I know the door-to-door is a big part of that, but how do we change on the technological side of things? We'll start with you, Angela. What would we like to see change?
I admit I really am not very comfortable with TikTok yet. I've been asking people to tell me how to figure out how to use that. But yeah, I think that we do have to stretch ourselves a little bit, no matter what generation we are, to try to go to the places where those people are. So I promise I will work on that. But I think that's definitely part of it. And then, like I said, I actually go to events where there's young people and talk to them. So I think that's a little bit different too, is that some people might like to stay in their own bubble of comfort, but you do have to reach out. And I think you also have to understand what's important to those people and then kind of get them in those places. I know, for example, that the environment is really important to young people. When I'm talking to them, they're very worried about it. They're concerned that we're not doing enough to address the state of the climate. And we can see some effects of that happening right now, right, with the hurricanes and terrible flooding happening in places we didn't think it would ever happen before. So I think we do have to get more engaged in the things that are important to young people, too.
Okay.
Well, I've got a website, jakeforweber.com. Emails, I'm not doing a TikTok dance. I won't do it.
That's unfortunate, but all right, we'll move on.
No, that's not unfortunate. That's for everybody's benefit, trust me.
That's fortunate.
Yeah,
okay,
that's a good thing.
Gotcha.
But, you know, I've seen, like, Senator Milner, when I used to live in her district, she had an advisory committee, right, of different community members, just random people in the community that would come and meet together to help bring up different ideas and solutions that they would see. I think that's a great idea. When I was party chair, we would have quarterly meetings and we'd rotate them around the different libraries in the county, right? Just to give kind of an open house. I think that was a great opportunity for people to come in and voice their concerns or hear what we've got going on. Those are all things I definitely plan on continuing.
Okay, thank you. Let's get into campaigns financial. So this is also a two-parter, is what are the primary sources of funding for your campaigns, and why do you think that they have specifically chosen you to support? So what are the primary sources of your campaign's financial support, and why do you think that they specifically chose you to give you that funding? We'll start with you, Jake.
Yeah, I've had the Utah Bankers Association, the Utah Credit Unions Association, I know the Taxpayers Association, Education First. They were my first and biggest donation. I've also had donations from the Republican leadership. I've had donations from some individuals. I'm not really going out asking for donations from individuals, just we all know that money's tight right now for everybody. And so I'm not going out and asking for money from individuals. The reason I believe I've been getting these donations one is I have been the sole Republican candidate since January. And two, it's because these groups see that I will fight and defend their beliefs and what they're fighting for, you know, education for kids and choices and behavioral services to give more, you know, to them and to everything that they're funding. They just see me as a candidate that will be able to back their beliefs.
Okay. Same question.
And I love that Education First. They didn't give me a chance to endorse me, but as a former teacher, I hope that I align with their beliefs, and I appreciate everything they're doing. Yeah, so my primary sources of financial support have been individuals. I have over 200 individuals who have given to the campaign. I also have numerous unions, whether it be electrical unions or the pipe fitters or the Teamsters, so I've been visiting with a lot of them. And I feel like they support me because actually when I was in New York City and was a public school teacher, I was part of a union there, and I believe wholeheartedly in their mission to make sure that people have a livable wage, have the benefits that they need, because I feel like one of the reasons that unions are becoming more prevalent across our nation is because organizations are really out for the buck. You know, a lot of times they're not really thinking about the workers. So I really appreciate the support of those folks. I have some other support from Fresh Air Pact, and I can't think of any more, but I'm sure there's more on my list.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. We are here at this place, right, where we have a great sponsor here. So I want to know, what have you done to get to know the public servants, first responders in the community, in the district? What have you done? And what have you done outside of just the norms? Some ways that you've engaged with first responders, public servants, and things like that in your district to kind of let them know how you support them. We'll start with you, Angela.
Sure. Well, I'm so honored to serve on the Ogden City Council and support the Ogden Police Department. When I first got on the council, I joined the Citizens Police Academy, and that was a really wonderful experience, just understanding all the nuances and all the different parts of public safety that I didn't really think about before, whether it be dispatch, the EMTs with the fire department, all the different aspects of that, the SWAT. I even had to do a kind of mock arrest, a pullover of someone, and then try to pat them down. And obviously, it was an officer that was doing it. We were just modeling it. That really gave me a perspective you wouldn't believe about how different it is to think about it from the outside and be on the inside. Obviously, I'm not a police officer, but it really made me think about how they always have to be thinking kind of the worst case scenario in their role. And that changed my perspective a lot around some of the rhetoric around public safety. So I've always been a huge advocate, even in rooms where people were talking very negatively about the police department or public safety. I've often stood up for them in those spaces because I want to make sure people understand the complexity of those jobs, and that most of the time people go into those roles because they want to do good in our community. Sometimes, obviously, there's bad actors or there's negative things that happen in the community, but I think we have to work together to support public safety. I've also advocated for their increase in pay over the past 6 years. I think increased their pay about 30% over the past 6 years, as well as advocated for additional staff members to be added. They were having a hard time even just recruiting for to be fully staffed for a while, but once we increased the wages and benefits to a certain extent, finally the Ogden Police Department was fully staffed. But we need more officers too, because we have one of the highest call rates in the area. So I talk with officers and I try to see things from their perspective.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, again, being new, I don't have quite that experience. But what I have done is I've come here, I've toured the jail here, especially last year before we went to the bond. I was very vocal about the bond issues and trying to get the vote out and trying to get people aware of what was going on and why it was important. I've been a lifelong supporter of all of our first responders, right, as I know everybody is. Everybody supports our first responders. And going into the legislature, I plan to continue to that support. That's my answer.
Okay, all right. Along with that, there's a sub-question that I kind of like. It's, would you be willing to attend Citizens Police Academy? And why or why not? So we're going to hopefully not like the old movies, Police Academy. I don't know if I'm dating myself saying that, but you know what you're talking about. Okay, good. You're both all right. We're on the level. Would you be willing to attend? And what would you like to get out of something like that if you are, or why wouldn't you? So we'll start. Go for it. Go for it, Angela.
Yeah, well, I definitely would even think about doing it again, just because, like I said, you get a perspective of all the different areas of the force that maybe you hadn't thought of before. And I feel like there's so many things that we don't understand exactly about an everyday job like that, whether you're the traffic cop or, like I mentioned before, the dispatchers. I really didn't realize how impacted they were by their position. Sometimes they work 10 or 12-hour shifts, and they don't always know what happens after each call. They might deal with one that might be like, like my cat is loose or something like that, and then the next one is, someone's life is on the line, and then they have to get off that call and they go on to the next one. And that really made me have a different perspective about the kinds of supports that public safety officers need, because those can be very traumatic situations that they never get a chance to really kind of deal with all the way through. So I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I'm not excited about getting tased.
No, I didn't do that.
Didn't do that. Okay. Well, if we can opt out of that part, sure.
You can.
I have. It's great. I recommend it to everybody. Yeah, everyone should be tased and sprayed.
Yeah. No, I absolutely would do that because I agree. You know, anytime we can get a new perspective or a fresh perspective that kind of challenges our own, I think that's a great thing that we can do. I'd love to go on a ride along, right? I think that would be absolutely fascinating to see what these men and women are dealing with every single day, and they just call it their job, right? I'd absolutely be for that. Yep.
Okay. This one kind of goes along. I'm tweaking it slightly, but I think it's an important one with our voter base and how we view. Right now, we've seen that quite a large segment of our population seems to have somewhat of a negative viewpoint of first responders sometimes and law enforcement, unfortunately. So how would you handle those questions, and how would you handle this populace that would come up with just those big picture complaints like what I'm talking about? We'll start with you, Jake. How would you handle that?
Yeah, well, I think it's the same way as we handle the other issues when we're out door knocking or I'm calling voters, right? It's a lot of national issues, right, that they want to bring up.
Okay.
And what I always have to do is remind them that that's not Weber County, right? That's not West Haven or Ogden or wherever we're talking. We may have some of those same similarities, but usually we can calm down kind of that rhetoric of what's going on, because I do believe that the first responders that we have here in Weber County and the chiefs and the sheriffs and everybody that we have in charge here are some of the best that we have. And I trust them wholly to do their job and to train their people to be the best that they can be.
Okay. All right, same question?
Yeah, it's very complicated, right? So over the years of my service, there's been many times when this issue has come to bear. One example I'm thinking of was just actually right before I got on council. There was a lot of fear in the community for immigrants or refugees around, what would happen to them if they get pulled over because of national conversations and national rhetoric, right? So I helped to, I can't take complete credit, but I helped to convene a conversation of the interfaith groups, the Ogden NAACP, Latinos United for Civic Engagement, and others with those communities and the police chief and the mayor at that time, to really talk about these issues and say, what can we do to help people feel that they're safe in our community, because this is the role that we play, and really to explain that to them. So after that meeting, then we had a community meeting that was open to anyone, that we ensured that there was translation available and interpreters, so that then they could have an open conversation and about what happens when you get pulled over, what kinds of things should people be asking you for, et cetera, and then what shouldn't. And so really to build the trust between the community and the public safety officers, because I agree, many times the people that are doing the service don't represent that larger group too. So this has happened several times, and I've helped to facilitate those conversations so that then people can have just communication across those different kind of barriers or those divides that we talked about before, to see each other as people and not to just think one thing just because you heard one news story.
Okay. Along the same lines, we've heard some of that rhetoric steep into phrases, calls like defund the police and things of that nature. So what are your views on those kind of phrases, calling on defunding the police, and what views would you have on police reform, if any? So we'll start with you, Angela.
Sure. Well, I think sometimes, they're kind of these terms that are thrown out, but people aren't really getting into the meat of what they actually mean. I think about it just like in any other organization. I do this on a daily basis in my day job, where we do continuous improvement processes, and I know that our police department in Ogden is very into this kind of thinking too. You're always working to improve and do things better than you did before. So I think some great relationships and some great work have come out of that, and that includes like having a more well-funded and resourced MCOT team, which is a team that comes out to calls that helps, so our officers don't have to go out to every call. These folks would go out when it's more of a behavioral health issue to help, and some people might call that police reform, but I call it really like finding other ways to work to really meet the needs of people, and also to help support our officers, because then they don't always have to be the ones going out on those calls.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm definitely not in favor of defunding the police. And I like that. Again, police reform, I don't know, to me it has kind of a negative connotation, right? As in the police are doing something wrong, and I don't agree with that. But I do believe that any additional training and resources that we can provide, because police officers are having to deal with new and ever-changing problems every day, I think is a good thing to constantly keep them trained and educated and the tools that they need.
Okay. All right, this one kind of comes from, I like what it's saying, so a little complex, but I think if we dig down to, how do you represent different diversity groups without sacrificing the needs of the majority? So how do you represent and talk about different diversity groups without sacrificing the needs, or sometimes even wants, of the majority? We'll start with you, Jake.
Yeah, great question. Well, I think we have to understand that people are always going to be upset, right, about one thing or another, and I don't think getting 100% of everybody on one page to agree is ever really going to happen. I think the best solutions come when everybody compromises, right? If everybody walks away a little bit upset, but still getting a solution, I think that's a win-win for everybody. So I think in order to keep minority groups or groups outside of the majority happy or heard is just that, listening to them and making sure that you've heard and understand their positions and where they're coming from, and truly finding the best solution. And if that happens to fit into what they believe, great. But we need to make sure we have the best solution that fits all while still hearing everybody's sides.
Well, again, I agree with everything you say. I think the biggest difference I would say for me would be that sometimes when you're representing people that have less voice in situations, certainly you want to work across the divides, have these conversations with people, try to build relationship and build trust with everyone that's at a table. But honestly, sometimes you just have to say, no, this is the right thing for this particular group of people, and I'm going to have to stand on that, whatever it might be, whether it's my morals or my values, I have to stand with that group. And that can be very uncomfortable. It can feel hard to do that sometimes, but I think if you build trust with community in a way where you've been along with them all along, you trust, you respect each other based on just your own humanity and your ideas, that people can help to understand when maybe you don't always agree and when you have to stand up for those things that maybe not the majority doesn't always agree with. And I think that's definitely one of our challenges that we have with a supermajority, is that we don't always hear those kinds of voices.
Okay. These next couple are a little bigger, so bear with me on that, but I think they're very good questions. First responders, much like military personnel, dedicate years to physically demanding, sometimes very hazardous jobs. A key benefit of their service was the eligibility to retire after 20 years. However, this was changed to 25 years recently, resulting in some responders receiving lowered retirement benefits compared to others, despite the funding being available to rectify the situation created by Utah lawmakers. They opted not to take those actions. What would you do to resolve the issue in your term if elected? And if you are elected, would you commit to meet with representatives from the Fraternal Order of Police and other first responders to work and fix that issue? We'll start with you.
Yes, I'll absolutely meet with them and try to resolve that issue. I think that we really are going to have to work on a way to solve this. I mean, I was talking to one of the former chiefs, right, and there's a huge gap in people between like 2012 and 2018 that joined the force. And for some reason, our legislature has not chosen to meet the needs and to solve that gap. And that will have to be done before these folks are ready to retire. So I'm absolutely for engaging and doing whatever we can to ensure that they get their equal share.
Let me just follow up. What do you think you could do to help resolve the issue at the state level?
Yeah, it's very challenging. I think you have to work across the aisle and find other people that have like-minded values to ensure that that's possible. Yeah, because you have to work together to make it happen. Obviously, I wouldn't be able to do it by myself.
Sure. Okay. Jay?
Yeah, I agree with everything Angela's saying. I think specifically, there's legislators that are sitting there now, right? And I've got good relationship with some of them, and I know that Angela does as well. But I think one of them could start a bill file right now, so that when we do get into the legislature, we can start running with that bill immediately. To think that I know the answer on what that bill needs to look like, that's not true, right? I think Angela's absolutely correct, where we have to bring people into this conversation that know these issues. We're just the ones that are able to bring them to the table and give them that voice. They need to be the ones to tell us what it is that they want and what they need, and let us go be that dog and fight for them at the state capitol.
And then follow up, would you be willing to commit to meeting with first responders?
I plan on it.
Okay,
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. That's good. So, all right, that's good. The next one. First responders throughout the state have faced unjust disciplinary processes, some being subjected to career-threatening accusations lacking evidence or merit. We believe in the importance of due process as we work to serve our communities. At the same time, we're committed to ensuring that those who do not uphold professionalism and lawful conduct are held accountable. What legislative approach would you take to address these concerns? What would you do about those, so the unjust disciplinary processes that some law enforcement and other first responders are facing, and help uphold professionalism and lawful conduct with those that do have those issues? We'll start with you, Jay.
Yeah, well, I love that our justice system is innocent until proven guilty, right? And I think that's just what we need to follow, is we need to make sure that everybody has due process. Everybody's voice is heard. Everybody's story is heard. As far as doing anything at the legislature, again, I shy away from being hasty to jump at a legislative action, right? I'd like to see what the issues are, what are the possible solutions, and if the best solution is legislative action, then great, that's the action we take. But I would hate to add just another bill or another law on the books just for that sake.
Okay.
I think, yeah, I agree. I would definitely want to talk with the officers about what we should do at the legislative level. I think that I definitely have the perspective of a former teacher where when you have students in the class and they come and tell you something about their family life, and then vice versa, they go home and say something about the teacher to their family. I always like to say, okay, I'll probably believe about 50% of that right now, and then later we'll get to the bottom of it, because sometimes people have different perspectives, and I feel like that kind of puts you in a similar perspective. People jump sometime to a conclusion when they see a news story or when they hear one side of the story, but I definitely agree that you're innocent until proven guilty, and that we need to make sure that officers, just like everybody else, have that similar treatment.
Okay. Very good. I'd like to open it now to the general audience here. If there's any questions or things you would like to ask, I'll try to streamline that for our candidates. But if you have any questions or things you'd like to ask our awesome candidates, this is now your time. So anyone out there that wants to ask, come on, you got to ask something. I need at least one, so I feel like I'm doing my job here. Oh, you got a question? Oh, you raised your hand. It's like an auction. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. There you go. You just
More
bought that.
soccer fields.
You bought that vase, sir. You bought that vase. Dad's on the hook for 10 grand now. Sorry about that. Anyone out there? Come on. You kind of have one. Yeah. No. Okay. Sit next to you then. Come on. You got.
It's also a great time if you're here in support of a candidate to ask a question that kind of like bolsters their platform.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. All right. Let's ask it. Yeah. That's good.
What's your position on the environment and the water crisis here in Ogden?
What's your position on the environment and water crisis? I like that. Jake, go ahead and lead us off.
Well, that's a great question. I basically grew up on Pineview and Willard Bay, right? So the water issues here for me are close to heart because there's a lot of memories for me tied up in those places. And I want those to continue for when I have kids, right? I want to be able to take them there and be able to enjoy those places. So we also see, Great Salt Lake is disappearing. That's not good. That's not healthy for anybody. I think we need to do whatever we can, as fast as we can, to help preserve these areas and keep them as pristine and perfect as we can.
Well, I can't disagree with that. Sorry. It's not as big of a difference as you might think. Yeah, absolutely agree. I also think that we definitely have to think about our growth and how that impacts water usage. And I think there's been some great policies put in place recently, with as far as landscape restrictions and other kinds of guidance for development. But it's definitely a concern of mine, and also just protecting all of the, wildlife and all of the systems that are in place that help to purify that water also. I think that's a big challenge we have with the inland port coming up. I know that's just kind of a done fact, but that's definitely a big concern of mine, that we're getting rid of some of these natural occurrences that help to purify that water and help our environment be cleaner. So I think we have to think about it in industry as well as in housing. And there's some really great examples of industry locally in Weber County of businesses that have seen how more sustainable practices actually help to benefit their bottom line too. And so I really support helping to support those businesses in any way possible to continue that and promote that for other agencies too.
I'm going to follow up with that because I like where you were going with that, but I'm going to follow up. What are the biggest, if we are to look at the differences, what are the differences, maybe not even personal, but party differences that we would see on how we look and approach our environmental concerns? What would you say are the biggest party differences or big tent differences that the two sides have on how we address and deal with the environmental issues, the water issues, things like that. We'll start with you, Angela. What are the biggest differences?
Yeah, I
between
mean,
the
I
two of
don't
you?
know if I can say all of them. One big difference I'll say is that we have one Republican, John Curtis, right, who's willing to talk about climate change. Like, in fact, he just had a summit about it. And a lot of times on the other side of the aisle, people aren't willing to really talk about things in that way. And so I think that that's really important, is to just believe the science, believe what's happening, and to take the responsibility for how we've made it happen too. So I think that might be one big difference.
Okay, I like.
Yeah, I think one of the big differences is Republicans like to see the natural resources as a point of self-reliance, right? If we have these natural resources, let's use them, and let's be able to, if not profit on them, but at least help our citizenry, right, with whatever we can with these resources. For me, I think I still lean a little bit more into keeping things as green and as perfect as we can, while utilizing those resources as safely as we can. I think that's where you'll see a big difference. But again, like you say, John Curtis is opening up a huge part of the party, right? So a lot of these ideas that a lot of people really have never even talked about or heard about or dove into. And I think it's a great thing when we can open up these new ideas for anybody in the party. So for me, I'm not necessarily a party line. I'm going to vote just whatever my party says. I'll vote what I'm asked to vote by my district.
Okay, thank you. You had yep, we had another question over there. Did that answer? You feel good about it? All right, good. Once you feel good, you were the one that took the leap, so yeah, thank you.
Hello, thank you for allowing me the question. Utah has one of the lowest per pupil spending dollars across the country, so I am curious your stance on the expansion of the Utah Fits All scholarship.
Okay.
That's the Amendment B. Is that what you're asking?
Well, Utah
Right.
Fits All has already passed and has expanded it.
Yep.
And there is already talk of continuing to expand that program despite not having any data backing that it is a successful program. So I'm curious if you would vote to approve the expansion of more dollars going to the Utah Fits All scholarship.
I think as long as we can show that kids are still getting a quality education, right? I think that's a part, is we're not able to track just as well as we are in public education, right? We can see how kids are doing year over year. I think we need to have those exact same kind of markers and qualifications for whatever choice people make. Do I think we need to expand dollars to it? Yeah, I'd be open to expanding dollars as long as we can make sure that kids still aren't being forgotten, kids aren't being lost, kids are still getting the education that they deserve.
I think my big concern with that is that right now, in my perspective, we don't have enough money in public education. So until we're able to bolster the public education system as it is enough, then we shouldn't be putting money other places too. So that's my big concern with it, is that we're taking further resources out of that coffer that needs to go to our current system and to support teachers and families and students so that they can succeed.
Any other questions? That was good. 2 good questions. I liked it. Anyone else? All right. Oh, yeah, you killed it. The fist bump. That's good. All right. Oh, you did have one. They're pointing at you.
Okay.
Okay. All right. There we go.
Do it.
Yeah. Might shake up the whole campaign right here. There we go. Let's shake it up. Who's doing it?
You were talking about the issue of first responders having wage increases and all that. Are you for or against increasing taxes in order to meet those?
Good one. Go ahead, Angela.
I'm definitely for increasing taxes when it's absolutely necessary. I also really support looking at staffing levels and looking at other issues within the whole system. Because like in the city level, for example, we have a whole budget that covers everything that a city offers, and that includes public safety, which is the officers and the fire department and the EMTs. So I think it has to be a balanced approach. It just depends on the situation, and I'll do whatever we need to do to support the people that are working for the good of our community.
So the Weber County Sheriff does zero-based budgeting, right? And that's how he turns in a budget every single year, starting at zero and building out what he sees he needs every year for that budget. I think if we could get other agencies and other departments around the state to do that same kind of budgeting, I think we could find all the money we need, or maybe not all of it, but a sizable amount of money that we need in order to hire these police officers before we raise taxes. I'm like Angela, that would be a last resort for me to ever raise taxes. I live in the one city in the district that doesn't have a city property tax, and I'm very proud of that, and I hope to keep that same way.
Very good. Good question. Thank you very much. And everyone that asked the question is still breathing, right? Good. So you did good. Any other questions for us here? Okay. Well, then we're going to move into our last 2 minutes. I'd really like you to highlight in your final 2 minutes what your campaign and what you stand for, and how, when we go to that ballot box, why I should check the box next to your name. We'll start with you, Jake, and then we'll go to Angela.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm running, this is my first campaign. I'm running to bring common sense, conservative approach to District 9. I'm running because housing affordability has ran completely out of control. I come from a millennial generation. My generation and my nieces and nephews, we all are worried about how we're going to buy and afford houses over our lifetime. We're all worried about how we're going to be able to have a family, have kids. What's the education going to look like when they get there? We need to be able to find solutions that can not only keep our education and keep our housing, but expand it and get it better for everybody. This isn't a solution for just Republicans. This isn't a solution for just Democrats. These have to be solutions for everybody. And that's what I'm promising to bring to the table. So I hope when you get that ballot, you'll mark that name, Jake Sawyer. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So I'm Angela Choberka, and I hope you'll vote for me when you get the ballot. But I totally agree with some of those things that Jake has talked about. I'm running to represent our district so that we have someone at the table that has a perspective of maybe a little bit of a different viewpoint, but also someone that has the experience working at the city level, which I really think can bring a lot of insight into the legislative process. It's one of the challenges we have now is sometimes the legislature is passing laws that impact our city that they don't understand the implications for all cities. Not every city is exactly the same. The housing needs in West Haven, the infrastructure needed there is different than the needs in Ogden City or in Roy, which cover part of our district. And so I think that we need someone there that has insights into those things and also is willing to work beyond divides and also across the aisle to help to bring these solutions to bear.
Thank you very much. A few thank yous as we wrap up. I first want to thank Kayla, who's not only kept the time, kept it running great, and also given me a lot of things to say if I mess something up. So let's give Kayla a hand for doing all that. Appreciate that. Also want to thank Derek Fisher, who's doing everything today, and his awesome assistants. Right? I saw one of them was a part-time ninja doing some sneaky stuff, so that's good. And let's thank our candidates, Jake and Angela, for their participation. Thank you so much. And this concludes our debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you.